All right, we're going to talk about this purple button-down shirt right now. You're doing the pencil flats for it. On the screen, I'm showing the inked version, but today we're just going to do the pencil flats for it. And what I want to do is talk you through how to figure out how that collar looks, because we are going to be doing flats for children. A lot of times people end up doing a flannel or some kind of button down in their children's collection. We're also going to have a menswear project towards the later part of the semester, and for that you may end up with a shirt flat as well. So this is a really useful garment to do. Now, I put photos of the garment in the assignment, so you'll see that there. And let me go ahead and get started. I always start here and work my way around. So I'm going to go ahead and draw the collar first. Be sure you're looking at the photos of the garment as you do this. And as you're watching this video, I'm hopeful that everybody actually already tried this, that you're not... Oh, I need more lead. Hold on a sec. Okay, got it. These little 003 pencils are awesome, but oh my gosh, the lead is so thin. Okay, so let me draw the collar. Now, as you're watching this, I hope everybody has actually tried it. I hope you tried to do this before watching this video, because you're going to get more out of this lesson if you give it a shot first, so that you can figure out what makes sense to you and what doesn't. I'm going to go like this. We'll come back to that in a second. And let me go ahead and put the shoulder in place. Okay, so this is a women's button down, but it's got all the same details that we would see on a men's button down and then some. For the arm side, it's going to come down to about here. Now, I noticed on some people's t-shirts you followed this line on the croquis. That is not bad, but it's going to look a little better if we actually curve it the other way. Okay, now it's got a puff sleeve. And if you could tell from the photos, this is sort of a 3/4 length sleeve. So I'm going to say that this sleeve is going to come down to about here. Here's the puff. Are you ready? I'm going to pop up for the shoulder, give it a little volume, and then I'm going to come down, and gravity is going to let it balloon back in as it gets towards the hem. The hem has a little ruffle, and it's actually elastic holding here. So if you look closely at the photos, what you'll see is that there's no seam here, okay? There's no seam here, it's just stitching. Now let me go ahead and draw the little ruffle in on the sleeve. This is going to be very similar to what we saw. Let me just do it. I'll do it over here. Got a bunch of other stuff on this paper. I don't want to waste the paper. Here's, oops, let me make sure I'm in the frame. Okay, so here's a bigger version of her little sleeve, okay? To make this look like it's all gathered up, you're gonna do something kind of imperfect, okay? And then here's the top part of it bubbling up. We're gonna have 2 rows of stitching. Again, if you look at the photos, that's what you'll see, okay? 2 rows of stitching. And then what I do is anywhere I've kind of got my hem sort of changing direction, I'll put some lines going straight up towards that elastic. And then likewise, I'll put a couple of lines and also some swoops coming from the elastic towards the hem. And if you then want to go and put a couple little loopy swoopies going up the other way, and last but not least, just a couple little crunchy lines right here to show that that elastic is sort of elasticated. Now, we're not quite done here. There is an underarm seam, so we need one nice clean line that is continuous all the way along, okay? And then additionally, there is stitching on this. It's a tiny little baby hem, 1/8 of an inch fold and stitched. And we'll just show that with a little stitch on here. Okay, so that's a bigger version of what we need to do over here. And before I get too far along, let me mark her center and mark her center. Okay, so we'll give a little bit of like that. A little stitching, and some lines. There's not a room for a ton of this, but a little bit is really kind of nice to show the garment. Okay, we definitely need that underarm seam. That has to be there. That is non-negotiable. Okay, now I need to put the hem of the shirt. It's not too fitted. It is definitely a shirt tail hem, so the front's going to go low. just like that. And the back is going to go even lower, just like that. And what you'll see is, actually, I can take this off of her for a second. Let me clean up my intersection over here. What you'll see is that the hem has also a little delicate folded hem. Okay, so we're going to get stitches and we're going to get a line and a stitch. Now, this is just like that pink tank top that we did. This would go all the way. I'm sorry, I don't want to be rushing, but at the same time, I don't want these videos to go on forever. I'm going to pull the garment out so you can see it. Okay, so here we go. Here's our little folded hem. On the outside, you just see a stitch. And on the inside, you see that same stitch, but you also see a line where the fabric is ending above it. Okay. Okay, so that is that. Now, let's talk about this placket and this button situation. Actually, I'm going to do a couple more things before I do that. There's a shoulder seam. I want you guys to look really closely at the photos because you'll see a lot of stitching detail on the arm side, on the shoulder seam, on the yoke on the back, all of that good stuff. I'm going to put a couple little loopy-doos right there. Notice that my little loopy-doos, they echo the silhouette direction, and then they sort of become more straight up and down in the middle. On the shoulder, the gathered ruffle is really only at the very top of the shoulder, so we wouldn't want to be putting those lines down too low. Okay, let's draw the back neck. So this is the part, the whole collar with the collar stand is what gets people a little bit confused. I'm going to come in here. I'm going to draw the back neck. Now, I want this to go either down a little bit or straight across. You can really do it either way, okay? But what we don't want to do is a curve like a hill, okay? We don't want it to go upwards. I might actually drop it down ever so slightly, okay? And now in the center part, we've got a collar stand. In order to draw that nicely, I need to reflect and draw my collar on the other side. So let me go ahead and fold her in half down my center lines really carefully. Okay, I'm going to trace my collar on this side. See if I can get that into focus. There we go. I'm noticing the camera sometimes is focusing on my hand instead of on the flats, which is kind of annoying. I don't know that I'm able to fix that. Okay, and then shoulder and all that other good details would just be copied over as well. Okay, now we need to put the collar stand and we need to put the placket. So here's the collar stand, okay? These actually come down, these collars, and they hit the top of the collar stand. Now let me show you the collar stand, okay? You have a photo of this in Canvas. There's that collar stand. The collars, sometimes they're more like this is kind of what I was drawing it like, but these ones I guess go straight down. And then we've got this curve. Now this is a women's shirt. This one's going right over left. And we've got a button placket, which does have an edge on both sides. They don't always have that. Notice also that this button has a horizontal buttonhole and these buttons have vertical buttonholes that are centered. When you have a horizontal buttonhole, they're not centered. They go off to one side. Just like the jeans waistband. But when you have a vertical buttonhole, those are centered perfectly. Okay, and we've got a stitch on both sides. And we've got a stitch on the collar stand here. And we've got a stitch on the collar itself. Okay, so lots of little details. All right, I'm gonna bring these in. I feel like we're gonna do that. I'm gonna bring the tip together because that really is more like what the garment looks like. Although I don't always do it that way. Now, this is so tiny, everybody, but I'm going to put that collar stand right there. You see it? That's that little overlap, and that is where the placket opens up. This placket is going to run right down my fold. It's down the right edge of my fold because the placket has both sides, as we just saw, and they are centered over the center line. Okay. So I'm going very carefully. I'm about 1/16 of an inch on either side of my fold of the paper. Okay, there we go. I'm going to stitch around my collar. And I actually want to talk to everybody about the collar stitching because that's something that people oftentimes do incorrectly when they first start out. And let me get the rest of the stitching on the collar stand. Oh my gosh, so tiny. And then down here, I want to try to go on both sides. Now, if you're ever in a situation where it is simply too small to fit the detail that you want to fit, okay, because real garments in real life, they have so much detail. They have so much detail. You can do a call out. Okay, so what you'll do is you'll do a zoom in of the garment. Take a look and see how many buttons there are. They need to be evenly spaced, and we'll put those little buttonholes in. I will not take the time to do that right now, but I'm just going to kind of eyeball it. But be really precise, guys. We don't want our buttons to look like they're not evenly spaced, because I hear all these horror stories about, you know, the flat was rushed, the buttons weren't, for example, the buttons weren't evenly spaced. The factory saw that and made the shirt with uneven buttons. Whose fault is that, right? Like, you get your batch of stuff back from the factory and all the buttons are all weird. Well, you drew it that way, right? So I don't know, guys. That's a tough one. It really does, like, and I've had this in personal experience when I had things come back from production and they were incorrect. Okay, this is the back of the collar stand that I'm drawing right here, and there is a little stitch on it right here, and then I drew the little tag. I have personally had things come back from production incorrect, and I was able to point to the flats that had it correct, even annotated, okay? And the factory was on the hook for that. They were the ones who had to redo it. But it was thanks to that attention to detail. So this stuff is really valuable. We need a side seam right here. Okay. And I'm going to just really quickly trace the back view of this collar, because that is the other thing that I just want to make sure everybody understands. Arm side goes all the way to the silhouette edge because it picks up again on the back. Underarm seam and the side seam, technically those actually run into each other. Okay, so if that hits and becomes the side seam, that is what's going on when you lift up the arm of a garment. Okay, let me fold this and I'm going to draw the back neck. I'm going to trace the silhouette. For a back view, we always do it the same exact way. We're going to trace the silhouette and we're going to have faith that there's a way to make it into the back view, okay? So we'll start just like this. Okay, and then, you know, all the other stuff, right? But I'm just gonna do this part because that's what I really need to show everybody. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna connect from here to there. You got it? There's your shirt collar. Now, we are not quite done because we've got a stitch on the edge of the collar that hits the silhouette. That stitch picks up right here. Okay. Now, let me ask you guys something. Should I put a stitch on this top edge? Should I put a stitch right there? The answer is no, guys. Here's the back of the shirt, okay? Here's the edge of the shirt. There's the stitch I just drew. There is no stitch up here, okay? This is not an edge of the garment. This is just where the collar wraps towards the inside, okay? It's the silhouette edge of the flat, but it's not an edge of fabric. Does that make sense? The edge of the collar is going around and going around and going around towards the front. So that's where the stitches go. The mistakes I see that people make when they do a collared shirt is they put a stitch up here, or they put a stitch up here, okay, which is incorrect for the same reason. The other funny thing people do is they put a stitch here. Don't do that. Does it make sense why we don't want to do that? That's also not an edge that gets stitched. That's just where the collar is continuing around to the back of the garment. Okay, so don't go on autopilot and just stitch around. We got to be sure the stitches are in the right place. Okay. Okay, so I won't finish that because I think you guys get it. But I hope that you found that one helpful and good practice.